Hi there, my name is Muhammad Hafizi. Today, I am going to talk about the theory of constraints. What is it and how it can change your life? What is the theory of constraint? Let's start with a definition of this theory when we apply it in normal engineering practices, and then what is the definition of the theory in daily lives. If you hear the term theory of constraints, you may imagine that we are going to dive into some heavy concepts and complex terms. Far from it, you are wrong. The theory of constraints, or TOC, is really a methodology used for process and quality improvement. Its main objective is to remove barriers or constraints, which we also like to call bottlenecks. Many reference goes on to explain steps to apply the theory of constraints, in particular to large-scale manufacturing, which is where it can be especially useful. It is great for improving efficiency of systems made up of many people and processes. For me, I like to apply the theory of constraints on a smaller, more personal scale in terms of what I need to do to complete a project or a task. It is particularly helpful when determining the order of priority to get things done. Therefore, in our life, the theory of constraints help you figure out exactly what those few things are, because it forces you to look at what you are trying to achieve and what is stopping you from doing so. For a more understanding, I would like to give you a case study. Think of a bottle of water you find on a riverbank. As you try to pour out the water, nothing comes out. It turns out there is a stone blocking the bottle. You remove the stone and try again. Then you find a clump of leaves. You repeat the process until the water is flowing again. In a real production environment, it is not always that simple, but the basic processes are the same. You need to find a single bottleneck and work until it is removed, the rock or the stone, then move to the next, the leaves. This careful step-by-step approach ensures that we improve throughput, in this case the flow of the water, and eventually our profit. Let's take a look at a specific method for identifying and fixing constraints on the next slide. As I mentioned before, the name of the approach is the 5 steps. It is a methodology for identifying and eliminating constraints. Embedded in the theory of constraints, TOC, is the notion of prioritizing improvement activities. The top priority is always the current constraint. In environments where there is an urgent need to improve, TOC offers a highly focused methodology for creating rapid improvement. Production improvements are rarely one-time fixes. We need to continuously remove bottlenecks and improve production. One approach is called the 5 focusing steps. Even though we call them steps, it is really a cycle to identify and improve open constraints within production processes. The first step is to identify the system constraint. It is to identify the current constraint, the single part of the process that limits the rate at which the goal is achieved. Secondly is to decide how to exploit the constraint. Make quick improvements to the throughput of the constraint using existing resources. An example is to reduce or eliminate the downtime of bottleneck operations. Next, subordinate everything else. The non-constrained components of the system must be adjusted to a setting that will enable the constraint to operate at maximum effectiveness. Once this has been done, the overall system is evaluated to determine if the constraint has shifted to another component. If the constraint has been fully eliminated, the change agent jumps to step 5. The fourth step is to elevate the constraint. Elevating the constraint refers to taking whatever action is necessary to eliminate the constraint. This step is only considered if steps 2 and 3 have not been successful. Major changes to the existing system are considered at this step. Last but not least is the repeat step. Return to step 1, but beware of inertia. The 5 focusing steps are a continuous improvement cycle. Therefore, once a constraint is resolved, the next constraint should immediately address. This step is a reminder to never become complacent, aggressively improve the current constraint, and then immediately move on to the next constraint. Therefore, we can briefly explain the steps of improving and making the water to flow out from the block water by using the 5 focus steps. First, identify the bottleneck. Is it a small stone or a boulder? Number 2, exploit the bottleneck. This means that we make quick changes. For example, we remove the rock or the stone from the water bottle. Number 3, subordinate. At this step, you shift other people or resources around to support removing the bottleneck. Number 4, elevate. If you're still stuck, figure out what else can be done. You might need to get a vacuum and suck out the leaves from the bottle. Number 5, repeat. This is a continuous process. There is no true quality or production improvement is done. Now, I will explain to you how I apply the theory of constraints in my daily life. So for any change I want to make in my life, there are 3 key steps. The first one, gain clarity about what I want. Number 2, comprehend the system I am going to use to get it. And the last one is to execute the system in the right order of steps. People are usually good at step 1, at least in a vague sense. Often, we don't understand exactly what we want until we go after it and realize we wanted something else, or we change what we want as time goes by and we grow. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to avoid the personal development discussion. This line of thinking opens up and stick with a more simple principle of knowing what you want. For example, if you know you want to make $3,000 a month from an online business so you can quit your job, that is a fairly reasonable goal, one that has tangible outcomes you can measure, and one that many other people have done, so you have examples to learn from. The next step is to research how to achieve this goal, figure out your options, and choose the best one for you. From there, you study the system so you understand it in principle and comprehend how all the pieces go together, even if you have never actually done it before and don't know all the tiny details. You are looking to form a macro or bird's eye understanding of the system you are going to build. Then, you just follow the steps until you have what you want. Easy, right? Well, not quite. This is where the theory of constraint can be helpful. Da 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 da! TOC to the rescue! You can use it to ascertain what is missing in order to move through each step. Your job is then to go as far as back as necessary to solve the problem that's stopping you from completing the next step, and so on and on. Let me explain with an example from my life. One of the other aspects of my life I have worked on to change previously, where the theory of constraints has been helpful, is how I met girls to date and with my social life in general. I was frustrated for much of my high school and university days with how I met people. Thanks to a combination of being very shy and entrepreneurial, meaning I didn't meet people through work or work-related function, I wasn't having the kind of social experiences I wanted. When it came to dating, I was basically relying on meeting friends of friends, which can be a great way to meet people, but very, very limited, especially when your friends are in steady relationships and pretty much spend all their time with partners. I was lucky if I had one social outing to go to each month that actually had new people I didn't already know. I decided to do something about it. First, I identified what exactly I wanted. Meeting girls I would like to date was the big picture goal, but I wasn't sure exactly what context this could happen in. As a result, I gave myself the goal of experimenting with different types of social environments to meet people to see which I enjoyed and which resulted in meeting the types of girls I was interested in. I did some research to learn more about my problem and how other people had solved it. I also began to look for events I could attend. As I turned my focus on this aspect of my life, I came to a challenging realization, one that I had known for a long time, but was too afraid to confront. My constraint was me. I had no problem seeing girls I would like to meet. It was the meeting part that was hard. I realized what I needed to work on was my shyness. Not being able to talk to people was the constraint that stopped me from moving forward. No matter what the context, if I didn't work on my first, I wasn't going to get that. I could write a whole book on my process of becoming more confident approaching and talking to the girls, but I don't have the space for it here, and plenty of people have already covered this topic elsewhere online. What I can say is, after improving my ability to talk to strangers, I opened the door to more and more constraints. For example, even if I could start conversation, that didn't necessarily lead to getting contact details for girls. Then even if I got contact details, that didn't mean I could get a date. There were a lot of constraints to work through, but without solving that first initial problem of being afraid to talk to strangers, in particular pretty female strangers, I will not get any further. The theory of constraints in this situation was helpful because I could become very singular with my focus. Once I knew that shyness was the problem, I worked on that. Once I was more confident in that department, I started working on conversation skills and how to ask for contact details from someone and build enough rapport so asking for a date was not a painful process for either party. I also had to get used to things like being rejected and not attaching myself to a specific result, skills that help in all aspects of life but are perhaps most helpful in dating and in business. The sometimes harsh truth is that we often know what the main constraint is that's stopping our success, but because it's hard, or we don't like the job that needs to be done, or we are afraid, we put it off. We then blame all kinds of things for stopping our success, even when we know there really are just one or two things that need to be done to start the ball rolling. Unfortunately, the challenge of reconciling a passion with a profit is often very difficult. There are times where no matter how much you love a subject and are prepared to do the hard work, it will ever be a money maker for you. Of course, you cannot know this for sure until you try. In conclusion, there are all kinds of hidden constraints that you won't discover until you really take a drill-down approach to each problem you have. Thus, by using the theory of constraint and apply it in your daily life, you may have found the braveness to confront the constraints to achieve your success. Thank you.